The night Serena Hayes' life shattered began with champagne and applause. At 52, she stood in the grand ballroom of the Waldorf, guest of honor at a charity gala that bore her name. Cameras flashed as she smiled, that practiced perfect smile she'd perfected over 30 years of building her real estate empire. Forbes had featured her twice. Politicians sought her endorsements. Young women cited her as inspiration, proof that a woman could command billions and never apologize for it. She left just after midnight, her driver navigating the sedan toward her penthouse. The city lights blurred past her window as she checked her phone one last time. Tomorrow's board meeting, the Portland acquisition, everything under control, exactly as she liked it. Then her driver turned onto the highway. The freight truck came from nowhere, jackknifing across 3 lanes. Metal screamed against metal, glass exploded into diamonds of light. The world spun, twisted, went black. And Serena Hayes, the woman who controlled billions, suddenly controlled nothing at all. She woke in darkness. Not the darkness of sleep, something far more terrifying. Her mind was sharp, alert, screaming inside her skull. But her body refused to respond. She tried to open her eyes. Nothing. She tried to move her fingers, to curl her toes, to turn her head. Nothing. She tried to scream for help, but no sound escaped her lips. The doctors came in hushed voices. "Deep coma," they said outside her door. "Minimal brain activity. We'll monitor for changes, but the scans aren't promising." They spoke about her as if she were already gone, discussing prognosis and protocols and clinical detachment. What they didn't know, what they never tested for, was that Serena could hear every word. She was trapped inside her own body, a prisoner in a shell that no longer obeyed her commands. Locked-in syndrome, the medical professionals would later call it, a rare condition where the mind remains fully conscious while the body becomes completely paralyzed. But no one suspected. They saw a wealthy woman in an expensive hospital bed, hooked to machines, and assumed the worst. The first day was bearable. Nurses adjusted her IV while discussing their weekend plans. Doctors checked her vitals and dictated notes into recorders. To them, she was a case number, a chart, a body requiring maintenance. But the real torture began when the visitors arrived. On the second morning, Serena heard the door open and recognized the voice immediately. Robert Mitchell, been her CFO for 15 years, a man she'd trusted with the company's most sensitive information. "The board is concerned," Robert said to someone else in the room. His voice was low, careful. "If she doesn't wake up within 30 days, we need to discuss the succession protocol." Another voice responded, her legal counsel. "Her shares alone are worth over $2 billion. Without a clear directive, this could get messy. Has anyone found a will?" "We're looking. But you know Serena, she never planned for failure." They laughed. Both of them laughed while standing over her supposedly unconscious body. Serena wanted to scream. She wanted to rise up and fire them both on the spot, to remind them who had made them wealthy, who had built everything they now schemed to divide. But she could only lie there, frozen. Listening to men she had elevated discuss how to carve up her empire. The visitors continued throughout the day, arriving in waves. She heard their voices dripping with false concern. One woman called her situation a tragedy, while another whispered about her penthouse and what would happen to it. Someone mentioned her beach house in the Hamptons, her art collection, as if she were already dead and buried. A phone camera clicked. Serena realized they were taking photos, not out of concern, but for social media, proof they'd been here, content for their followers. They stayed less than 10 minutes. As the hours passed, Serena began to understand something she'd spent her entire adult life avoiding. She had built walls around herself so high that no one could climb them. Decades ago, a man she'd loved had courted her, made her believe in romance, then disappeared with the money she'd lent him for his business. After that, Serena decided that love was a weakness she could not afford. She'd poured everything into her work instead. Accumulated wealth, power, prestige, told herself these things would protect her. But now, lying paralyzed, she realized the truth. She had built her fortress so well that when she finally needed someone, there was no one inside the walls with her. Every relationship was transactional, every friendship conditional. Every person who walked through that door wanted something from her, and not one of them cared if she lived or died. By the end of the second day, Serena had given up. Her body was a prison. Her life was a lie. Perhaps it would be better to simply let go, to drift away and end this charade once and for all. Then the door opened again. Different footsteps, slower, hesitant, the squeak of rubber-soled work shoes on linoleum. "Good evening, ma'am." The voice was deep, gentle, carried a slight southern accent. Serena didn't recognize it. "I don't know if you remember me," the man continued. "Probably not, but I was there that night, at the accident." Serena's mind raced. She tried to recall those chaotic moments after the crash, the smell of gasoline, the distant sound of sirens, and something else, a hand. Someone had held her hand. "My name's Marcus Johnson. I work here at the hospital. Maintenance and cleaning, mostly. I was driving home when I saw the crash happen. You were still conscious when I got to you. Do you remember?" She didn't. Everything after the impact was a blur of pain and fear. "You grabbed my hand," Marcus said. "One held on real tight. I kept talking to you, trying to keep you calm until the ambulance came. I told you everything was going to be okay." He moved closer. Serena could hear him settling into the chair beside her bed. "The doctors say you probably can't hear me. They say you're in a deep coma, and there's no brain activity that suggests awareness." He let out a small breath. "But I don't believe that. See, when my wife was dying, the doctors said the same thing. They said she couldn't hear me, that there was no point in talking to her. But I talked to her anyway, every single day until the end. And I believe she heard me. I believe she knew I was there." Serena felt something shift inside her chest. This man wasn't here for her money. He wasn't here for her connections. He didn't even know who she really was. "So I'm going to talk to you. Miss Hayes, maybe you can hear me, maybe you can't. But I made you a promise that night. I told you that you were going to be okay. And I don't like breaking promises." For 2 days, Serena had listened to people discuss her wealth, her assets, her value as a commodity. But this stranger spoke to her as if she were simply a woman who needed kindness. "I'll come back tomorrow," Marcus said, rising from the chair. "Gotta pick up my daughter from my neighbor's place. She's 7 and she worries when I'm late." He walked toward the door, then stopped. "Sleep well, ma'am, and keep fighting. I know you're still in there somewhere." The door closed behind him. In the silence that followed, Serena made a decision. She would not reveal that she was conscious. Not to the doctors, not to the executives, not to anyone. As she would remain in her prison of flesh, hidden behind closed eyes, for one reason only. She wanted to hear what Marcus Johnson would say next. For the first time in decades, someone had spoken to Serena Hayes like a human being, and she was not ready to let that go. Marcus returned the following evening, just as he'd promised. Serena heard his familiar footsteps enter the room, the soft squeak of his work shoes against the floor. He settled into the chair beside her bed, and she found herself holding her breath inside her motionless body, waiting for him to speak. "Good evening, Miss Hayes," he said. "Busy day today, 3 floors to clean by myself, because Jimmy called in sick again. That man catches more colds than anyone I've ever met." He chuckled softly at his own observation. "But I'm not complaining. Work is work. And some people think what I do is beneath them. Mopping floors, scrubbing toilets, emptying trash cans. They look right through me like I'm invisible." Serena listened as Marcus described his day. The way certain doctors never acknowledged him when he cleaned their offices. The way some patients' families complained about the smell of disinfectant, as if he were personally offending them. The way security guards sometimes stopped him in hallways asking for identification, even though he'd worked there for 6 years. "You know what I tell myself," Marcus continued. "Every time I clean a room, I'm helping someone heal. Maybe they don't know it. Maybe they'll never thank me for it. But when a patient wakes up in a clean room with fresh sheets and floors that smell like pine, maybe that's one less thing they have to worry about. Oh, maybe that's my way of making a difference." Something stirred in Serena's chest. She had spent her entire career surrounded by people who craved recognition. Every deal she closed, every building she developed, every dollar she earned was documented and celebrated. She had never once considered the people who worked in the shadows, making the world function without applause. Marcus shifted in his chair. "I see how people look at me sometimes, Miss Hayes. When I walk down the street with my daughter, I can feel their eyes on me. A black man in worn-out clothes holding a little girl's hand. They don't see a father coming home from work. They see something else, something they've been taught to fear." His voice carried no bitterness, only a quiet weariness. Lily asked me once why people stared at us. I told her that some folks just haven't learned how to see yet. They look, but they don't see. They make pictures in their heads before they ever bother to learn the truth. Serena had never thought about this. She had lived in a world where every door opened for her, where her wealth and status preceded her like a red carpet unfurling at her feet. She had never wondered what it felt like to be invisible, to be judged, to be feared for simply existing. For the first time in her life, she was seeing the world through someone else's eyes. As the evening grew later, Marcus's voice softened. "I want to tell you about my wife," he said. "Her name was Angela. She was a nurse here at this hospital. That's how we met." Serena could hear the love in his voice, even now, years after Angela's death. "I had just started working here. It's her first week on the job, nervous as anything. Dropped a whole bucket of mop water in the middle of the hallway. Made a fool of myself in front of everyone. But Angela didn't laugh. She just grabbed some towels and helped me clean it up. She looked at me and smiled and said something I'll never forget." Marcus took a breath. She said, "Everyone spills something their first week. It's what you do after that matters." And then she introduced herself. That smile of hers, Miss Hayes, I swear it could light up a whole room. He went on to describe their courtship, how he would find excuses to clean the hallways near her station, how she started bringing him coffee during her breaks, how they got married in a small church with only a handful of guests because neither of them had much family left. When Angela got sick, I thought I could fix it. I thought if I worked hard enough, saved enough money, prayed hard enough, somehow it would be okay. His voice cracked slightly. But cancer doesn't care how hard you work. It doesn't care how much you love someone. It just takes and takes until there's nothing left. Serena felt her heart constrict. She had never experienced this kind of loss. She had never allowed herself to love deeply enough to be devastated by its absence. The last few weeks, Angela couldn't talk anymore. The doctors said she was unconscious, that there was no point in sitting with her. But I sat with her anyway. Every single day I told her about Lily, about what the little one did at school, about what we had for dinner, about how much I missed her. He fell silent for a moment. "I believe she heard me, Miss Hayes. I believe she knew she wasn't alone. And when she finally let go, I was holding her hand. That's all any of us can ask for, I think. To not be alone at the end." Serena wanted to weep. She wanted to reach out and touch this man who had suffered so much and still found the strength to show kindness to a stranger. But her body remained frozen, a tomb of flesh and bone. "After Angela passed, it was just me and Lily," Marcus continued. 7 years old and already asking questions I didn't know how to answer. "Where did Mommy go, Daddy? Is she coming back? Why do people have to die?" He exhaled slowly. I didn't have answers, still don't. All I could do was hold her and tell her that we were going to be okay, that we had each other, that love doesn't disappear when someone dies. It just changes form. Marcus leaned back in his chair. "There are days, Miss Hayes, when I don't know how I'm going to make it. Rent is due and I'm short by $100. The refrigerator is empty and payday isn't until Friday. Lily needs new shoes because she's growing so fast, but I can't afford them yet." His voice grew quieter. "But then I come home, and that little girl runs to the door and throws her arms around me, and she looks up at me with those big brown eyes, and she says, 'Daddy, you're the strongest person in the whole world.'" Serena felt something break inside her. "In that moment," Marcus said, "I'm richer than anyone. I don't have money in my pocket. I don't have a fancy car or a big house. But I have her. I have her love, and that's worth more than anything." The words echoed in Serena's mind long after Marcus left that night. She had spent 52 years accumulating wealth, building an empire, proving to the world that she was worthy of respect. But no one had ever looked at her the way Lily looked at her father. No one had ever called her the strongest person in the world. She had billions of dollars and not a single person who loved her simply for being herself. The fourth day brought an unexpected visitor. Marcus arrived earlier than usual, and Serena could hear a second set of footsteps beside his. Lighter, quicker, the footsteps of a child. "Sorry to bring her, Miss Hayes," Marcus said. "My neighbor had an emergency and I couldn't find anyone else to watch her. I hope you don't mind." A small voice piped up. "Daddy, is this the lady you've been telling me about?" "Yes, sweetheart. This is Miss Hayes. Remember what I said? We need to be quiet and respectful." "But she's sleeping. Can she hear us?" I believe she can, baby. So let's talk to her nicely, okay? Okay. Serena heard the scraping of a chair being pulled closer to the bed. Then she felt something unexpected, a small, warm hand touching hers. Hi, Miss Hayes. My name is Lily. I'm 7 years old. My daddy says you were in an accident, but you're going to be okay because you're strong. The child's voice was high and sweet, filled with innocent certainty. Serena heard the rustle of paper. I brought you something. It's a drawing I made. It has flowers and sunshine and butterflies. My teacher says I'm a good artist. I put it on your table so you can see it when you wake up. Marcus spoke softly. That's very kind of you, Lily. Daddy, do you think she's lonely? The question hung in the air. Why do you ask, sweetheart? Because she's all alone in here. No one's talking to her. It must be scary to be alone when you're sick. Serena felt her throat tighten, even though no muscle moved. That's why we visit her, baby, so she knows she's not alone. Lily squeezed Serena's hand gently. Miss Hayes, you don't have to be scared. When my mommy went away, I was really sad. I thought I would be alone forever, but Daddy told me that Mommy is still with me, right here in my heart. The little girl's voice grew more earnest. So, you're not alone either, okay? We're here with you, and even when we go home, you can keep us in your heart. That way, you'll never be by yourself. Serena had negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She had stared down hostile boards and outmaneuvered corporate rivals without flinching. But this child, this innocent 7-year-old girl, had just undone her completely. You're not alone. 3 simple words that Serena had never heard in all her years of wealth and power. After Lily fell asleep in the visitor's chair, Marcus spoke in a hushed voice. I'm sorry if she was too much. She's got her mother's heart, always trying to take care of everyone. He was quiet for a moment. You know, Miss Hayes, I've been thinking about why I keep coming here. At first I told myself it was because of the promise I made you that night. But it's more than that. Serena waited, her entire being focused on his words. When Angela was dying, I felt so helpless. I couldn't save her. I couldn't stop what was happening. All I could do was sit there and watch the woman I loved slip away. His voice grew heavy. Coming here, talking to you, it feels like I'm getting a second chance. Not to save you. I know that's not up to me. But to be there for someone who needs it, to not let another person face the darkness alone. He stood up slowly. I should get Lily home. She has school tomorrow. Serena heard him wake the child gently, heard their soft footsteps moving toward the door. And with every step, she felt a growing panic rising inside her frozen body. She wanted to wake up. She wanted to open her eyes and thank them. She wanted to tell Lily that her drawing was beautiful, that her words had meant more than any business deal or accolade Serena had ever received. But the fear held her back. If she woke up now, what then? She would return to her old life, surrounded by the same vultures who had circled her bed for days. She would have to face the board members plotting against her, the fake friends who only wanted her money, the crushing loneliness that had defined her existence. And worse, if she woke up, Marcus would know she had heard everything, every intimate story, every vulnerable confession. Would he be embarrassed? Angry? Would he ever come back? Serena remained still, trapped not only by her body, but by her own terror. Late that night, the door opened again. Serena heard voices she recognized. The board members had returned, along with lawyers and someone claiming to be a distant cousin she hadn't seen in 20 years. The doctors say there's no sign of improvement, one of the lawyers said. If she doesn't wake up in the next 48 hours, we can invoke the incapacity clause. Her cousin spoke up. As her closest living relative, I believe I should be appointed guardian of her estate. Serena wanted to scream. This man had never called her, never visited, never shown any interest in her life. Now he was circling like the rest of them. The hospital is recommending transfer to a long-term care facility, another voice added. It would be better for everyone. Better for everyone. Except her. When they finally left, Serena lay in the darkness, more alone than she had ever been. Her empire was crumbling, her body was a prison, and the only people who had shown her genuine kindness were about to disappear from her life. The next evening, Marcus arrived with a heaviness in his step that Serena hadn't heard before. Miss Hayes, I have some bad news. I overheard the nurses talking. They're moving you tomorrow to some facility upstate. He sat down slowly. This might be the last time I can visit you. Serena felt her heart plummet. I know you probably can't hear me. The doctors keep saying there's no awareness, but I'm going to talk to you anyway, one last time. He reached out and took her hand. It was the first time he had touched her since the night of the accident. I want to thank you, Miss Hayes. You don't even know what you've done for me. Coming here, talking to you, it helped me more than you'll ever know. It made me feel like maybe I'm not just some invisible janitor. Maybe my words matter. Maybe my kindness matters. His grip tightened slightly. When I lost Angela, I felt like a part of me died too. But sitting here with you, telling you about my life, about Lily, about everything, it reminded me why I keep going. Because we all need someone to listen, even if they can't respond. He was quiet for a long moment. I couldn't save my wife. I held her hand until the very end, but I couldn't stop her from leaving. For a long time, I blamed myself. I thought maybe if I had done something different, worked harder, prayed more, she would still be here. His voice grew thick. But Angela taught me something before she died. She told me that love isn't about saving someone. It's about being there. Just being present, holding their hand in the dark, even when you can't fix what's broken. He exhaled slowly. I'm not going to pretend I can save you, Miss Hayes. I don't have that power. But I hope that somehow, in some way, you know that someone was here. Someone thought about you, not because of your money or your company, but because you're a human being. Man, every human being deserves to be seen. Marcus stood up and gently released her hand. Goodbye, Miss Hayes. I hope you find peace. Whatever happens next, I hope you know that you mattered to me. He walked toward the door, his footsteps slow and heavy. Then he stopped. Lily prays for you every night. She asks God to help you wake up so you can smile. She says, everyone deserves to smile. The door handle turned. Take care of yourself. And if there's any part of you that can hear me, please know this. You are not alone. You were never alone. I was always right here. Always. The door clicked shut, and in the suffocating silence of her prison, Serena made her choice. She could not let him walk away. She could not spend the rest of her life being transferred to facilities, discussed by lawyers, that picked apart by relatives who had never loved her. She wanted to live, not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as a woman who had finally learned what truly mattered. She wanted to see Lily's drawing. She wanted to thank Marcus for every word he had spoken. She wanted to feel the sun on her face and know that she was more than her bank account. For the first time in decades, Serena Hayes wanted to be human again, and she would fight with everything she had to make it happen. Serena did not sleep that night. Inside her frozen body, her mind raced through every moment of her 52 years. She saw herself as a young woman, full of hope and ambition, believing that love would find her. She saw the man who had shattered that belief, leaving her with nothing but debt and a broken heart. She saw the walls she had built afterward, then brick by brick, until no one could reach her. She had told herself those walls made her strong. She had told herself that needing no one was the ultimate freedom. But now, lying in the darkness, she understood the truth. She had not built a fortress. She had built a prison, and she had locked herself inside it for 3 decades. She thought about the executives who had stood over her bed, calculating her worth in dollars and shares. She thought about the friends who had taken photographs and whispered about her possessions. Not one of them had spoken to her the way Marcus had. Not one of them had seen her as anything more than a commodity. Then she thought about Lily, that innocent child who had held her hand and said 3 words that had broken through every wall Serena had ever constructed. You're not alone. She thought about Marcus standing at the door, saying goodbye, believing she would never hear him, the pain in his voice, the gratitude he had expressed for being allowed to sit with her, to speak to her, to matter to someone. He had thanked her. A janitor who earned barely enough to feed his daughter had thanked a billionaire for giving him purpose. Serena understood now what she had been missing her entire life. It was not money. It was not power. It was not the respect that came from fear or the admiration that came from wealth. It was connection. Simple, honest human connection. And she would not let it slip away. The 5th morning arrived with the sound of footsteps and hushed voices outside her door. The transport team will be here in an hour, a nurse said. Has anyone notified her family? Her cousin signed the transfer papers last night. Everything is in order. Serena heard the door open. Medical staff entered, checking monitors, adjusting equipment, preparing her body for the journey to a facility where she would likely spend the rest of her days. Then she heard another voice at the doorway, a voice she recognized. "Excuse me, I know I'm not supposed to be here, but I was wondering if I could say goodbye." It was Marcus. The nurse hesitated. "Sir, she's being transferred in less than an hour. We really don't have time for visitors. Please, just 2 minutes. I was with her the night of the accident. I just want to say goodbye." A long silence followed. Then the nurse sighed. 2 minutes, that's all." Marcus walked into the room. Serena heard him approach the bed. They heard his breath catch slightly as he looked at her. "Miss Hayes," he said softly. "I don't know if you can hear me. I've never known, but I had to come one more time." He moved closer. "I wanted to tell you that meeting you changed something in me. I was just going through the motions before, working, coming home, taking care of Lily. But talking to you, it reminded me why kindness matters, why showing up for people matters, even when they can't thank you for it." His voice grew thick. "I hope wherever they take you, someone talks to you, someone holds your hand, someone treats you like you're still here, because I believe you are. I believe you've been here the whole time." He stepped back. "Goodbye, Miss Hayes. I'll never forget you." Serena heard him turn toward the door, and something inside her shattered. Every fear, every doubt, and every wall came crashing down in a single moment. She could not let him leave. She could not spend whatever time she had left being shipped to a facility, surrounded by strangers, dying alone. She wanted to live, not as Serena Hayes the billionaire, not as the CEO, the investor, the woman on the Forbes list. She wanted to live as someone who could love and be loved, someone who could smile at a child's drawing and mean it, someone who could hold another person's hand without calculating what she might gain. Serena focused every ounce of her will on her right hand, the hand that Marcus had held at the accident scene, the hand that Lily had touched while promising she was not alone. Move. Nothing happened. Move. Her finger trembled, just barely, just enough. The heart monitor beeped slightly faster. Serena pushed harder. She imagined Marcus walking through that door, disappearing from her life forever. She imagined spending years in a sterile room, trapped in her body with no one who cared whether she lived or died. Her finger moved again, then her wrist, then her entire hand shifted against the bedsheet. The nurse gasped. "Doctor, she's moving." Serena did not stop. She poured everything she had into her eyelids, fighting against the weight that had held them closed for 5 days. Light began to seep through, blurry at first, then slowly sharpening. The first thing she saw was the ceiling, white tiles, fluorescent lights. The second thing she saw was Marcus Johnson, frozen in the doorway, staring at her with an expression of complete disbelief. Serena's lips parted, her throat burned from days of disuse. She tried to speak, but only a ragged whisper escaped. "Wait!" Marcus did not move. His eyes were wide, glistening. Doctors rushed into the room. Nurses shouted orders. Machines beeped, and alarms sounded. But Serena ignored all of it. She kept her gaze fixed on the man in the doorway. She swallowed painfully, forcing her voice to work despite the agony in her throat. "I heard you." The words came out broken, barely audible. Marcus took a step closer, then another, until he was standing beside her bed. "You heard me?" Serena managed the faintest nod. She struggled to form each word, her voice cracking and fading. "Everything." A breath. "Angela." Another breath. "Lily." She winced from the effort. The strongest person in the world. Tears spilled down Marcus's cheeks, not from embarrassment or shame, but from something far deeper. Serena gathered the last of her strength for one more sentence. Her voice was almost gone now. "Thank you for talking to me like a human being." Marcus reached down and took her hand, just as he had done on the night of the accident. "You're welcome," he said, emotion in every syllable. "You're so welcome." 2 weeks later, Serena sat in a wheelchair in the hospital garden. The autumn sun warmed her face as she watched leaves drift lazily to the ground. Her recovery was slow. The doctor said it could take months before she regained full mobility. But she didn't mind. For the first time in her life, she was not in a hurry. She had fired Robert Mitchell and the board members who had plotted against her. She had dismissed her cousin's claim to guardianship. She had restructured her will to ensure that her wealth would serve a purpose beyond enriching people who had never loved her. The Angela Johnson Foundation was now in its early stages, a charitable trust dedicated to supporting single parents and their children, not because Serena wanted to save anyone or be seen as generous, but because she finally understood that money meant nothing if it didn't touch lives. Marcus still worked at the hospital. Serena had offered him financial assistance, enough to never work another day in his life. He had refused. "Miss Hayes, you already gave me something more valuable than money," he had said. "You listened, you heard me. That's worth more than any check you could write." The only thing he accepted was a scholarship fund for Lily's education. Not charity, he'd insisted. Here, an investment in a child's future. Serena heard footsteps approaching and turned to see Lily running across the garden toward her, a piece of paper clutched in her small hands. Marcus followed behind, a gentle smile on his face. Miss Serena, I made you something." Lily reached the wheelchair and thrust the drawing into Serena's lap. It showed 3 figures standing beneath a bright yellow sun. A tall man with dark skin, a small girl with pigtails, and a woman with long hair holding both their hands. "That's you," Lily said, pointing at the woman. "You're our friend now. Daddy said friends are people who show up for each other, and you showed up, so now we're friends forever." Serena looked at the drawing, then at Lily, then at Marcus. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Serena Hayes smiled, a real smile. Not the practiced expression she had worn for cameras and business partners, but a smile that came from somewhere deep inside her, from a place she had forgotten existed. Marcus stood beside the wheelchair, watching his daughter bounce excitedly. He caught Serena's eye and nodded once, a silent acknowledgement of everything that had passed between them. They were not lovers, perhaps they never would be, but they were something rarer, something more precious. They were true friends, built not on money or status, but on the simple foundation of being seen and heard. Serena looked up at the autumn sky, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face and the warmth of Lily's hand in hers. She had spent her whole life believing that